What's up guys, I'm randomfrankp, and today we're going to be reviewing the brand new Samsung Odyssey G9. The 49-inch 240Hz ultra-wide monitor with a 1 millisecond response time. So if you're interested in the G9 and maybe you want to pick one up, I got you covered in this review. First off, just want to say, getting this thing unboxed and set up made me super giddy. I literally felt like I was thrown into Aperture Science and I was building Atlas. This is the real deal. Now, as you'd expect with a 5120 by 1440p dual quad HD 49-inch display, this is going to take up a good amount of desk space, as you can see with it sitting on my 60-inch desktop. In fact, the stand sticks out around 11.5 inches from the back of my desk, and the curved ends of the monitor reach out around 16 inches outward, so just make sure you have the desk space for this one. But man, when you sit down in front of it with that 32:9 aspect ratio and the 1000R curvature, which matches the curve of the human eye, your setup is just elevated to the next level, even if you barely have the room. And it is the world's first 1000R curved DQ HD gaming monitor, touting some pretty solid improvements over their previous 49-inch models from years past. And honestly, while it seems extreme at first, the curve really isn't as dramatic, and you get used to it pretty quickly. So at this size, it's the exact equivalent of having two 27-inch monitors side by side, except now without that bezel in the middle. And for visual comparison, for current ultra-wide owners at 34 inches, you can see you still get a pretty good amount of extra screen real estate on both sides. Before we move on the backside for your cables and connections, they have this cable cover that kind of hides everything on the back, so the entire backside looks flush and just super clean in this glossy white finish. Your cables actually get routed into the stand and down out the back, so if properly managed, you won't see any cables. But on the back behind the cover, we have a headphone jack, two DisplayPort 1.4 ports, an HDMI 2.0, two USB 3.0 ports, and a Type-B for connecting it to your PC. Unfortunately, no USB Type-C. Also on the back, we have a built-in headphone hanger, which folds out of the stand if you want to just place them there. But it is kind of, out of place to reach around the whole thing when you want to use them. And yes, you probably saw it glowing in all its glory. The back also houses this really futuristic looking infinity core lighting system that looks really nice in contrast to that black and white exterior. There are 5 lighting effects built into the monitor you can toggle inside the settings, plus 52 colors if you want a static look to it. It definitely looks cool. I just wish it wasn't hidden on the backside, and at nighttime it does add a bit of subtle backglow if it's near the wall, but obviously not going to be the easiest thing to see with this 49-inch panel right in front of your face at all times. Okay, gaming, use cases, my experience, let's talk the goods, because let's face it, at the end of the day, like 90% of you watching this and buying it are going to be buying this for gaming. And no lie, when I got this in 2 weeks ago, playing games at this new resolution with the curve really almost felt like I was playing the games for the first time again. So I definitely got sidetracked more than a few times and when I should have been filming, but I just couldn't stop playing. The monitor supports NVIDIA G-Sync and Adaptive Sync over DisplayPort 1.4, as well as FreeSync Premium Pro. So I know for me, with my 2080 Ti, being able to tune this to that rapid 240Hz refresh rate felt awesome. And I know some people will say that it's not worth it or you can't really tell, but 100% I can immediately notice a new refresh rate compared to my 144Hz monitors that I've used. It just feels a lot more buttery smooth. Now, in addition to gaming, I'll touch on it real quick. With all this, new screen, you can have numerous windows open. So it's going to be great for productivity in that sense. You can do picture-in-picture mode, things like, photo and video editing. This is going to be a dream for that. Spread out my timeline. You could have your bins open with all your video files there. I like to separate and monitor my vector scopes for when I'm color correcting. But I mean, in addition to just gaming, streaming on this would be great to have your game window plus chat and OBS all right there. Using this in a racing rig for day trading. The massive 49-inch size is going to give all users that extra freedom and flexibility now. I will say at first it was jarring. I didn't get a headache, but my eyes were slightly fatigued with so much going on right in front of you and your peripheral view, but I did get used to it pretty quickly. We as humans adapt, and while it seemed like a mammoth on day one, I've definitely gotten used to it. It's kind of like a phone screen. A few years ago, we all had, the 3.5-inch screens? Now most phones are like 6 inches and up. It also probably helps that I've been using a 34-inch ultra-wide since like 2015, so the adjustment really wasn't too tough. Now obviously, 32:9 ratio isn't the norm, right? Pushing games to 5120 by 1440p won't be an easy task for most computers, especially at 240Hz. I can say for the majority of my time playing Battlefield and racing around in Dirt Rally, scaling wise, everything looked fine, and yes, the resolution was supported. but you'll need to be running a pretty beefy rig if you want to touch at 240Hz and play still at ultra settings. Obviously, games like CSGO, Fortnite, less graphically intensive titles will benefit from the higher refresh rate. But do keep in mind that not every game may support that resolution or even scale properly to this new aspect ratio. I didn't have much of a problem on my end, but one thing I want to say is yes, on the edges of the screen when gaming in your peripheral view, the scaling isn't perfect and it will look slightly warped in some titles. Personally, I don't see an issue with it because I'm focused on the action, right in front of me. Everything happening to those extreme left and right of my screen is just an added bonus now and will only add to my game awareness. However, one thing I found is pretty interesting. So I tried to capture it as best as I could in Battlefield, but if an enemy is far away in the distance, but still happens to be on the edges of the display, like these guys running on the mountain, they do get scaled up pretty significantly to where they're easy to spot. But if I look there normally in game on the center of the screen, they're barely visible at all, like they're a pixel, if that. So that will sometimes happen with things off in the distance, maybe giving you a competitive edge even. Now, obviously most games and especially FPS titles, you can also usually change your field of view. So that would be one of the first things I recommend doing here since the screen ratio now is so wide. You're gonna wanna find a good balance to where it's not a complete fisheye, but still gives you, like I said, a good balance while complementing the new screen ratio. That's the key. And another thing to mention, in addition to everything else so far, is HDR. With a peak brightness of 1000 nits, this marks the first gaming monitor I've tested worthy of using HDR. With the QLED panel, which is quantum dot technology, we have HDR 1000, which is Samsung's standard to ensure peak brightness of 1000 nits, and HDR 10 plus. Enabling HDR in your Windows display settings, then again in your game, looks really fantastic here. In Battlefield, you can see it best in the sky, in the water. It holds all the detail in the clouds versus playing it stock where the majority of the sky just gets blown out. Now you may have seen a bit of flicker on screen with HDR on at 240Hz, but to get rid of it, I turned adaptive sync off and the response time to either faster or fastest, and that flicker will disappear. And yes, at 1000 nits, heads up, this monitor is super bright, and when I'm gaming, I only keep it at around 60% brightness in the settings because otherwise it's just too much. But I mean, I'd rather have the option to always increase brightness versus a dull monitor in comparison that only caps out at like 300 nits. Quickly touching back to the VA panel, I did want to measure the amount of backlight bleed levels sitting straight on with a screen this size. And as you can see, the only 3 barely noticeable zones are on the bottom left, bottom right, and top right. But honestly, it's barely noticeable in pitch dark and wasn't apparent at all in game. The last thing I'll mention is the menu before we wrap up, and thankfully they have an integrated joystick underneath on the right side for navigating the menus. It's very easy to find what you're looking for. Here you can toggle the refresh rate from the 60, 120 to 240 Hz, turning adaptive sync on and off, response time from standard, faster to fastest. And what's nice is on top of that menu there, as you can see, we have this bold chart pretty much like showing you what your current settings are. Low input lag options, and even a virtual aim pointer, which is pretty much, common nowadays for most gaming monitors. This gives you the option to have an on-screen reticle that you can customize and to, I guess, give you better aim in games if that game doesn't have a reticle already on the screen. And then we have the built-in picture modes from high brightness modes for FPS, RTS, RPG, cinema mode, sRGB, and thankfully all the color modes here are actually usable. Usually on gaming monitors, some of them will be completely oversaturated or the picture will be, crazy sharp. But I can honestly say, out of all the built-in profiles we have here, they are completely usable. This panel is factory calibrated at 125% sRGB coverage, as well as 95% of DCI coverage, so the picture right out of the box is really nice. Okay, so wrapping this up, do keep in mind this video was filmed at 29.97 FPS, so gameplay might not look as smooth as it does in real life at 240 Hz, just throwing that out there. And I want to bring up 2 things. First up, I love everything about this monitor, okay? I think hands down, it's my favorite piece of tech that I've gotten this year and in recent memory. The display is gorgeous, the specs are crazy, gaming felt brand new again, the light ring on the back looks sick, and second, if I'm being honest, 49 inches isn't too wide, okay? I said it. Yes, at first it seems massive, but after a day or so, you get used to it, you adapt. Now on the other side of the spectrum, there are some things I want to bring up, not cons necessarily, but just things to be aware of before you take the plunge to buy this. First, it's 2020. I wish there was a USB-C port on the back. Come on, Samsung, get with it. Second, obviously make sure you have a pretty powerful PC. You know, you need a powerful rig to take advantage of this monitor and the specs. 520, 1440p, 240 hertz. Make sure you can properly run that. And also make sure the games that you frequently play could be properly scaled to that resolution. And, you know, just do your research on that. Make sure the games you play could also take advantage of the monitor. You're also going to need enough desk space, as I showed you. It takes up a large portion of your desk, although you can wall mount it, which I may do. And also, make sure you have enough wallet space, because the moment you've all been waiting for, this comes in at $1699. Yes, $1,700. And that is a lot of money. No doubt about that. The most expensive monitor I've ever tried, but it's also the most premium monitor I've ever tried. It's the craziest monitor I've ever tried. And I think hands down, if you can afford that and you want to upgrade your setup and, you know, your gaming experience, it is hands down worth it in every regard. I love this monitor. It is the craziest thing I've ever seen. All right. So guys, that'll wrap it up for my review of the Samsung Odyssey G9. Hope you all enjoyed. If you want to check it out, I'll put a link for you in the description down below. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up to show your support. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at randomfrankp. And lastly, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Hope you all enjoyed. Hope you're staying safe. Have a good day.